Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sami Assad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Greetings, human listeners.
Greetings to everyone. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, thank you for trying something new. I will reiterate, Ben and I are a pair of automotive journalists, but more important than that, we're really good friends. Right, Ben?
Friendship is important. Hold on to it. Cherish it wherever you find it. Don't ever let it go. Let it twist inside of you, dragging you into darkness.
Think about your friends. Would they let you say that on public air? I would. That's what kind of friend I am for Ben.
A friend who's afraid of the answers that question raises.
Additionally, think about your friends. How many emails do you send your friends a day? Because me and Ben send a lot of emails to each other, even though we also have open and running chats in about 4 different platforms.
And often, a lot of the emails we forward each other, we already have those emails because we're on the same corporate PR email lists. And so I have it in my inbox, and then 30 seconds later, I have it again from Sami, or vice versa.
Or the other way around, yes. So yeah, we've established the friendship side of the podcast. Why don't we establish the automotive side of the podcast? Ben, tell the people where you've been writing lately.
Sure,
and how they can read it.
You can find my work at Haggerty, at Motor Trend, and at Inside Hook.
And you can find my work at autotrader.ca, driving.ca, Capital One's Auto Navigator. And if you really don't want to read my stuff but would rather watch me make a fool of myself on the internet, I am occasionally on the driving.ca YouTube channel, so you can see me talk about the cars that I've been driving or some news that's been going on, like when I was at the LA Auto Show.
Sami,
Ben,
before we jump into the cars today, there's something I wanted to talk about. I don't think we mentioned this on the podcast.
Is this your dentist thing?
No, I'm not going to talk about the dentist thing. If anyone wants to hear about the dentist thing, reach out on social media or email, and maybe we'll talk about it next week if you truly want to hear about that. But in any case, recently Warner Brothers announced that they were going to be selling replica versions of the Batmobile Tumbler. Are you aware of this?
Only because you sent me several links in several different ways to the article you wrote about it.
Christmas is coming, Sami. So these are unsubtle hints.
I've never realized how invested you are with Batmobiles. I mean, I thought I liked Batmobiles.
And then I took you to my underground garage and showed you my Batman Forever replica Batmobile.
Your underground garage. You can call it a Batcave at this point. Okay?
I built it inside the garage, but the wing on the back is so big I can't take it out of the garage. It's too large.
It only peeks out. That's it. It just goes out, comes back in.
It can only lightly terrify criminals in my area. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because they're charging $3 million each. And they're going to
is that it?
They're going to make 10 of them. And they're going to come with a smoke screen and quote unquote upgraded hardware and software. Sorry, upgraded software and fake machine guns. But the real reason I'm interested in this is because I got the crazy idea that if one person bought all 10 of these Batmobile tumblers, they could start a spec racing series. And Haggerty was kind enough to indulge me in my madness, and I wrote a feature about it. But the reason I was interested in a spec series for the Tumbler is because it's so unlike any of the other Batmobiles that we've seen. It's really in the movies, it's pretty much shown exclusively jumping or breaking through walls or smashing into things, right? That's what it does. And so
which makes selling versions of it really problematic to me.
Yeah, and what message are you sending to the buyers who are
imagine Activision was not even id from who makes Doom was you know what, we're gonna make the BFG 3000 or 9000, whatever number it is, BFG. Here we go.
Or if they made a Crazy Taxi.
I think they probably have.
I think Crazy Taxi was probably inspired by reality rather than vice versa. But in any case, I figured that if you were going to put these Batmobile tumblers into competition, you would have to forego the traditional closed course and just do a parkour type thing where you have an abandoned city or one of those warehouse districts that has seen better days, and you smash into stuff and you get style points. And it's kind of like X Games meets Monster Jam. That's where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. How much is a monster truck though?
Probably a lot of money. I mean, I don't
Less
think
than
it's
$3 million?
I don't think it's $3 million. I think you're right. I think it is more economical to own a monster truck,
But
which is, I
every
think, the
Monster
only
Jam-
time you'll ever hear me say that sentence.
More economic. That's the takeaway of this week's episode. Every Monster Jam should have a tumbler. I mean, I think that makes sense. They should definitely have one to do. But honestly, there should be a spec racing series of the latest live action.
The one that barely runs.
The one that sounds insane.
I love that.
Want
I love
one.
that. So yeah, we've talked about it on the show in the past. Sometimes I just boot up Netflix and go to the scene where the Batmobile is introduced, and I crank up my subwoofer and I just listen to Robert Pattinson start it up, and then it stalls, and then they start it up again, and everyone stops what they're doing and just stares at this crazy muscle car. So parkour tumbler Batmobile. Mm-hmm. That's my idea. If you see it somewhere else, you'll know where it came from. The funny thing about these replicas is they're all LS powered. They have like a 500 something horsepower. I think it's an LS3, which makes sense because that's pretty ubiquitous, and a 4-speed automatic transmission. So essentially the same drivetrain I have in my Jeep.
There you go.
Which is tuned for about 100 more horsepower. So I don't know how heavy these tumblers are, but it kind of feels like Warner Brothers is hedging their bets on people trying to actually jump stuff with them.
Yeah, I think they're trying. Yes. Anything else you want to talk about popular culture with this?
Putting it out in the universe, if a Warner Brothers executive is listening to this podcast, we would love to test drive a tumbler replica.
Yeah, 100%. You don't need to ask me twice.
Let's make it happen.
I was talking about this before the pod because it's like my favorite thing when like fake things become real things.
Whoa. Be careful with what you're about to say.
Okay. Because apparently Ian Callum, the legendary designer at Jaguar, has made a Jaguar CX-75 from the movie Spectre a real car.
Well, it was a real car.
Well, yeah, sorry.
It was a road concept, legal right? Car. Okay.
Yeah. A road legal version of that car. And I thought that was really cool. And then I think BMW...
Does Jaguar know that they made it? That he made it? When did this happen?
It happened after. I think it happened after their redesign. They're like, oh no, that's not us anymore.
Uh-oh.
And then BMW made a real life version of the M3 GTR that was the cover car of the most wanted 2005 Need for Speed, which I think is really cool too. I love it when I just love it when things transcend a screen into real life. I think that's cool.
So transcend. Aren't there other? Remember when Polyphony Digital was doing all of those Gran Turismo? Yeah. Didn't a few of those actually get built?
Yeah, for like concept cars, right? Like to show off at an auto show.
I think that a few of them were digital first, though. Yes. At least a couple, and then they made essentially what you're talking about, which is the
and then you could they would have like spec series where you could race them or something like that. That's really cool too. Yeah, it's different when it's like running product versus a like static concept car.
I also want to point out the dangers of your philosophy, where there's a horror movie franchise called Nightmare on Elm Street, where these things that aren't real get made real. Specifically, Freddy Krueger, who then hunts down a whole bunch of teenagers. So be careful what you wish for, Sammy, is what I'm saying.
Is he the part? I don't watch horror movies, so I shouldn't ask any more questions about it.
One with the claw hands.
Yes, I understand that, but they dream of him, and then he comes and gets them?
Yeah, if you dream of him, like 9, 10, never sleep again. You know the whole Freddy Krueger rhyme. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Because the idea is if you dream about him and you wake up, he's there, he's going to get you somehow. Usually in an amusing way.
Okay.
I mean, amusing if it's not you who's being killed.
Amusing, eh?
Yeah. It's a little tongue-in-cheek.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about cars like that we've been driving lately this week or what?
Sure.
You want me to take the lead here?
Of course. Especially if you're going to talk about the Tumbler. Have you been holding out on me?
No, I did not test drive the Tumbler this week. I'm sorry, Ben.
All right.
One of these days, maybe we'll throw it out.
One of these days, maybe you'll secretly drive the Tumbler.
Without telling you and tell you on the podcast? I drove the 2025 Honda Accord. It was called the Touring Hybrid. That's the trim level I drove. Okay. It is a $40,000 sedan with a really strong fuel efficiency. I think I'm getting about 50 miles per gallon, which I think is really strong. And it's really easy to like this car. That's the number one thing I can say about it.
So is the touring hybrid the top tier, or is there a sport touring?
It is the top tier of the Accord. There are, let me get this right, 1, 2, 3. There are 6 trims of the hybrid.
Of course.
And there are 3 of them that are non-hybrid, which are powered by a turbocharged engine. I believe I'm going to make sure I got this powertrain right. A 1.5 liter turbocharged engine that makes 192 horsepower, while the hybrid that I have has a 2 liter non-turbo engine, as well as 2 electric motors that combine for only 204, so basically just 12 more horsepower. But this is a very responsive powertrain. Honda really does. I think they should get a lot of credit for how their hybrid vehicles feel, which is responsive and elegant, which is not to say that like Toyota doesn't have elegant hybrid powertrains. It's just that sometimes when they kick on their gas engine, it's really like rough and
super noticeable,
abrasive.
Super. And I'm currently driving a Toyota hybrid, and it is exactly as you describe. You're just floating along on a sea of bliss, and then all of a sudden someone's running a dustbuster directly beside your head, and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, and you don't really get that in the Accord when it switches between its gas and hybrid engines, which it does fairly quick, like often, which I really appreciated as well. And the car just feels really, I mean, I know listeners have probably gotten bored of us saying crossovers, are compromised. They can feel a little bit like vague or heavy or boring or whatever. Sedans really sedans can still be boring. Let's be clear.
Of course.
But they also have, just due to their size, their shape, their design, they're so much more responsive and more rewarding than any crossover will ever be. Maybe not ever, but they're so much more rewarding. And
they are jumping out of, they're almost always lighter.
Yes, and just jumping out of, like, I drove a 3-row crossover last week. I jumped into this Accord, and you're like, yeah, why did we move away from this? Why is this not the popular body style on our markets?
Are you saying that sometimes the market votes against its own interests?
Well, I've always been curious as to, the not the hierarchy, the evolution of that market, which was that, crossovers came, people wanted more space and more practicality and maybe more capabilities.
And neglected the concept of hatchbacks entirely.
Yeah, and didn't want wagons or hatchbacks. And then the automotive market just started pumping out these crossovers as quickly, as easily as they could. And I think the market forgot about the other elements that make a vehicle appealing, which is what you see in these sedans. They're easy to get into. They're easy to just get in and drive. Great visibility, even though you're not high up off the ground. Sharp handling, even for a family sedan. Really responsive drive. Excellent fuel efficiency. 50 miles per gallon is beautiful. I don't know how else you can I don't know how you can put that down,
I agree with you, and I also came out of a large SUV and into a sedan this past week, and I have exactly the same thoughts. Like what are we even doing?
Why did we get away from this? I'll tell you straight up. I have a kid, I have a family, we go together
humble brag.
Everywhere, and we need to put, the baby's seat in the back seat and the stroller in the trunk and all their stuff everywhere. The Accord is the right size that allows me to do that right now. I don't know what will happen when the kid gets bigger or they come with more stuff, or if there are more kids in the future or friends or whatever.
Or he forms a gang and you have to transport them to the next Rumble.
Yeah, he'll definitely need an Accord for that.
Yeah. It's very intimidating to show up at the Rumble in a hybrid Accord.
Yeah.
Because you can creep up on it like in EV mode.
Yeah, there is an EV mode.
Exactly.
There's a couple of drive modes as well. This infotainment system is okay. I believe it's running an Android-based infotainment system. And as we leave this 2024, I've got to tell you, Ben, we've driven a lot of cars with this Android Automotive OS. This has been one of the lowlights this year for me. These Android-based infotainment systems, and that's even coming out of the Accord, which had a fairly decent one, in my experience. I didn't have any crashes. Everything, hooked up as it was supposed to. But there's just like things here and there from our other experiences. I told you about the Volvo, and I think
Volvo is notoriously bad.
some Chevys that have some like really sloppy infotainment integration. I'm worried that we've normalized slop, like in software slop.
Well, what choice do we have? I mean, sure, you could walk away from a car because the infotainment sucks. And I know there are a lot of people who aren't buying GM EVs because they can't get, say, Android Auto or Apple CarPlay.
Yeah.
But if everything else about the vehicle meets your needs, I feel like there's a strong contingent of buyers who will tolerate bad software design. And I think that that's misinterpreted by car companies as, well, we're still selling cars, so how bad can our system really be?
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I mean, there's an element there, but I don't know. A part of me, like I said, we've tolerated slop. I don't like that one bit. And I want cleaner infotainment. I want quicker, snappy. I want the features that I want up front and center, which is Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. I've been told from people that as long as they've got that connection to their phone, that almost no other aspect of the infotainment system matters.
And that's frustrating to automakers who want to monetize and control every aspect of the ownership experience at this point.
Yeah,
that's the tension that exists in this software world.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting out of this Honda Accord, which is slick looking. It feels great. It has all of the features I want. It has, heated and vented seats, heated heated steering wheel, heated rear seats. It's got USB-C ports galore. It's got a wireless phone charger. It's got a big old armrest storage area. I don't know what else to tell you about this thing.
Sammy, I think that we should maybe do a little bit of a non-standard show format this week, because I also drove a Honda Hybrid, not the Accord, but the Civic.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to talk about. But the thing is, the drivetrain is identical. It's the
which is
same
interesting.
200 horsepower, two electric motor drivetrain. Mm-hmm. The difference being the Civic no longer gets the 1.5 liter turbo that's available in the non-hybrid model Accord. Every car comes with a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that makes 150 horsepower. So the gap between the hybrid and the non-hybrid is much larger.
Unless you get a Civic Si, right?
Yeah, but the Civic Si is a special model. There's the Type R as well. That's I'm just talking about the base model.
Yep.
So the reason I bring this up is because a lot of what you're mentioning is stuff that I experienced as well inside the Honda Civic Hybrid. I had the sedan. I didn't have the hatchback. I know you've driven the hatchback in the past at the launch, I believe. So in terms of the Android Auto system, not the Android Automotive OS, I did not have as pleasant experience as you did. I had a ton of problems getting it to pair with my phone. I just bought a new phone last month. It's a OnePlus 12. It has the latest in whatever OS compared to the I guess I was running like Android 12 in the older phone, and I'm running Android 15. Might even have been Android 11. In any case, the Android Auto system in the Honda Civic Hybrid is supposed to wirelessly connect and wirelessly charge and do all sorts of fun stuff wirelessly. In my experience, I just got tons of interrupted connections, dropped connections. Sometimes it would lock me out of the system completely. I started using a wired setup to avoid the wireless charging and the wireless connection. And even that would drop on me from time to time, which is really surprising and unusual for a brand new vehicle. The vehicle that I had before that and the vehicle I had immediately afterwards did not have these problems with their wireless connections. So I'm sure it wasn't my phone. It was this Honda Civic Hybrid infotainment problem.
Well, you went online to see that other people were having similar issues. Was it specific to the Civic that these people are having issues with,
or to the Civic?
Because like I said, there's so much in common with these two Honda sedans, and I haven't had any issues. But I mean, we have different phones, we have different devices, we use our devices differently. I know you disable a lot of what are they called? Location privacy settings.
That's not going to have anything to do with whether
I don't know. I mean, I always think Google. From what I understand, Google likes to.
But if that were the case, then the Toyota I drove afterward and the Genesis I drove before would have the same problems, and they didn't. So clearly the problem is not my phone.
I got you. I'm not trying. Sorry, I didn't mean to blame you on that. I think that it's just, sometimes these Google systems, like I said, can be really, really finicky.
They shouldn't be, though. They should be
No,
universalized.
of course not.
It's absurd.
I thought that would be the ideal. I thought that was like the ideal scenario of Android Automotive OS. You've got like what I imagine is a relatively mature operating system that's been used in devices all over the world of different sizes, different locations, different capabilities, different data connections. Why aren't they working in our cars?
So, but to back up your talk about how well the vehicle handled, I mean, it was just night and day. Obviously, I was going from a much larger SUV to this compact car, but it was so comfortable to drive. It just felt much more engaging, even though it's not a sporty model whatsoever. I mean, 200 horsepower is decent, and Honda does a great job of hiding the fact that there's a continuously variable automatic transmission lurking under there. I find it's not intrusive whatsoever, but it's not a performance car. I wouldn't say it's a performance car in any way, but it is civilized, it is quiet, and it did really impress me overall as a driving experience. And I wasn't prepared for that. And trunk space wise, sometimes you're like, oh, hybrid batteries take up room. I put 500 CDs in the trunk and brought them down to a friend.
You and your CD, CD transportation gig.
Sammy, I don't want to talk about it, but it is what happened. And I had plenty of room. I also hit up a whole bunch of bake sales on the weekend because we're in that period of time here in Quebec and in Vermont, actually, where we checked out one where older people who are invested in their communities turn to baking, and then they have bake sales for the holiday season to raise funds. And I love it. I love sampling everyone's ideas for cookies and brownies and all sorts of stuff. Peanut butter balls, just amazing, delectable treats. And I spent a whole morning on Saturday just going from bake sale to bake sale. And
did you save any for me?
No, well, they're in the freezer, so yes. I mean,
whenever I come.
Well, you did visit me in this home in this year after 10 years of never visiting me in Montreal, even though Montreal is much closer. So I hold out hope that perhaps you will shower me with a repeat performance of that generosity of spirit.
I will repeat. There have been times when I went to Montreal and you left Montreal,
and somehow this is my fault.
You, yes. But one of the things, though, about Honda that I think needs to be addressed is that their pricing can be a little bit, I'm like non-competitive, I think is the best word I can use. This car starts at almost $30,000 when some of its competition, like let's say is that
the US pricing?
That's the US pricing.
Because the Civic also starts at $29,000.
Which is that's U.S. pricing or Canadian pricing?
U.S. pricing. So you're telling me that for the same money, you could get a hybrid sedan?
No, this is the non-hybrid.
Oh, well, that's not what we're talking about. I'm just saying
Accord in general.
You really got me there. I hope you feel good. I hope you feel good about what you just.
But hey, I mean, the hybrid starts at around $35,000.
So it's $5,000 more than the Honda. The version I drove, the sport touring sedan, starts at $33,000.
Okay.
And in Canada, it starts at $39,000, which is the top of their trim level. And that's
a lot of money.
Feel like Canadians. A lot of money. That's a full $10,000 more than the base LX Civic. But the hybrid itself starts in sport trim, and it starts at $35,000 Canadian. So again, there's that $5,000 separation between trim levels. And I had a lot of comfort gear and stuff. It didn't feel luxurious, but I was impressed by the interior. It looks good. It looks good in a way that is problematic for Acura, I think. Where like the Civics and the Accords have such nice cabins that when you get into the Acura and a lot of the switchgear is similar, you're kind of thinking, why did I pay more money?
Exactly. I agree with you on that. The hybrid in Canada starts at around $45,000 for the Accord.
So again, $5,000. It really just seems to be, $10,000 in that case versus the starting Civics. That's a much wider gap.
That's a much wider gap. That's where I'm coming from, is I think that Honda's pricing, especially in Canada, is completely difficult to swallow. I think they're being pushy with their pricing. I don't know if they believe that everyone will negotiate a better price. From what I've heard, it's not easy to do so nowadays. But I don't like this pricing. I don't like this pricing at all. I want to know what the Sonata hybrid, for example, costs in comparison.
I'm actually looking at the Corolla right now, which would be the comparison to what I drove. And the Corolla hybrid starts at $29,000, which is, it looks like
$5,000 cheaper
in Canada. It is, you're right on the money there. I'm currently driving a Corolla Hybrid. I don't want to spoil it for next week's podcast. There is a marked difference between these vehicles in terms of how they present themselves to the world. So I'm going to reserve most of my Corolla Hybrid talk for the next episode.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the Camry, even though I'm trying to get in one as well. The Camry is now hybrid only for 2025.
I do think that I will say that there is justification for why there's a price difference between the Corolla and the Civic, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair for sure. The Camry starts at $37,000 for its base model, which is also a hybrid.
That's in Canada.
In Canada, which is a $7,000 price difference. And you can also get an all-wheel drive version of the Camry, which I think is pretty cool for some drivers. That might be a really big defining factor there.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm driving right now, and we're going to have words about that.
I was talking about Camry. You're talking about Corolla.
Corolla, yeah.
Because we're talking similar cars, but different sizes.
That's true. In the US, the Corolla Hybrid starts at $23,000, which
that's really nice.
Which is, again, a $6,000 difference.
That's a really nice price difference. That's a really good starting price.
Yeah, it's in fact, if you're comparing the base Corolla to the hybrid, the step up is only $1,000. Maybe
that's really nice.
Maybe
I like that.
$1,400.
I like that. But this is what I'm saying is I think Honda doesn't know what maybe they know exactly how much a buyer will spend on an entry level vehicle like a Corolla or like a Civic or a.
Yeah, they're price maxing.
They're price maxing, exactly. They're saying basically that they think they have some of the best products in the segment, which I won't disagree with, but they're pricing their vehicles in a way, in that way too. And I don't think I like that at all.
Speaking about gaps, there's another gap that I experienced with the Civic Hybrid, and that's in the fuel mileage department.
Okay.
This vehicle is rated at 50 miles per gallon city and 47 highway. Mm-hmm. I saw 7 liters per 100 kilometers overall, which is 34 miles per gallon combined. That is a difference of about 30%.
Wow.
And a lot of that is going to be attributed to the fact that it's wintertime now. And
you're on winter tires too.
I'm on winter tires and I'm driving in cold weather. And, we complain a lot about how much range is cut off from a full electric vehicle due to cold weather. Well, it's the same thing for a gas vehicle, and even a hybrid is going to be facing the same kind of efficiency challenge. I mean, 30% is really standard for an ICE vehicle facing temperatures below 0 degrees Celsius.
Yeah,
which is
and
32 and below Fahrenheit.
No, but now you drive in rural settings, right? Mostly rural settings?
Yeah, but a lot of highway as well. Like, even on the highway, I managed to get like 36 miles per gallon. Not a huge difference. Like 6.6 or something.
Typically, these hybrids are a little bit less efficient on the highway than they are in the city conditions.
Yeah, and it's a 3 mile per gallon difference according to the EPA.
And like I said, I live slightly more urban settings, and I've been finding that the fuel efficiency in the Accord is actually pretty good. But I do think that temperatures are playing a pretty strong part in maximizing the efficiency of them.
Were you able to match the manufacturer claim?
No, they say you can get 50 something, a little bit over 50 miles per gallon, and I'm just at the 49 miles per gallon mark. I'm just on that border there.
That's wild. I mean, I was nowhere near close to that. It speaks to the temperature differentials between frosty Quebec and global warming Ontario.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm actually reading other reports of people saying that they're seeing under the EPA numbers. But
one thing I found interesting was, we were talking about EV modes in these vehicles. It was I never really noticed the EV mode in the Civic. It really seemed to appear when I was coasting on like 2-lane roads. When I was driving around town, such as it is, it didn't really make itself known. In the same way that a Toyota hybrid, I think, forces EV mode more.
Okay.
That was the difference that I noticed.
One of the things that I think is not described very frequently in the Civic and Accord hybrids is that they have paddle shifters, and the paddle shifters control the regen rather than fake gears in the CVT.
I found the regen to be pretty effective in my car.
It is very effective.
I would sometimes leave the house with like half the battery charged, and then I'm driving for a little while, and I look down and it's fully charged.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Up and downs on the hills in my area.
So I mean, I really like this car, but I think that their pricing is out of whack, and I'm concerned about that. I think that really removes some of my recommendations for it, because there's a lot of good cars you can get for 40 grand. Like,
yeah, I was really debating that myself. Like, do I recommend this car because the price is a little bit higher? But I think I have to say yes. I think that after having sampled some of the other hybrids at this, not this price point, obviously that's the bone of contention, but in this segment, I think that the Civic does present itself as an above average experience across the board. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be worth paying for some people, especially, if you like that nice interior, if you want the extra features, and if you prize the driving experience. Because there are other hybrids in this segment that we will talk about next week that are more about wringing every possible kilometer out of a drop of fuel versus kind of spreading things out so that you get a good driving experience in the process.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I think caught me off guard, was how enjoyable the Accord was to drive, and in the past the Civic Hybrid was to drive. I think, I mean, I guess we said the same thing about the Prius, right? The new Prius is actually pretty good to drive too.
It's fine.
It's pretty good.
It's fine. It's not an enthusiast vehicle. It's definitely not.
Well, the Civic, I don't know if the Civic is, or the Accord is.
I'm not claiming it is.
But it's closer to an enthusiast vehicle than it ever was. All of these things are.
Okay, saying the Prius is closer to an enthusiast vehicle than it ever was.
Yes.
I mean,
it's like I moved a foot closer to Europe
when I step out of my doorway, I am closer to your new house than I have ever been. Than when I'm in my office. It's kind of this similar type of.
Okay, fine.
The chasm is vast, I guess, is what we should say there.
Sure, but it's just, to me, like, these are legitimately good driving vehicles.
Yes.
Which is what we used to not say about hybrids, about sedans, and about things like the Civic, right?
And which is sadly not the case across the board, even in our modern age.
What do you mean by that?
I'm saying that there are other compacts, hybrids, that are not good to drive.
Right.
So maybe you will pay more for the Honda because of that. And I can't fault you if you make that choice. But I do think that, like, if you're comparing this to a compact crossover, it's just a much better driving experience overall.
Agreed.
Everything about it. And I live in Snowtopia, and I had no problems with this front wheel drive vehicle on good tires going down my snow-covered dirt gravel road. It's just not an issue. And even when I was clearing out my driveway, I had like 5 or 6 inches of snow on the ground, and I was driving through it with this car, no problem.
And I'll reiterate, the size thing really is not that bad. Like, it's quite the space inside the Accord is very decent. I think it's very like, cabin space isn't far off what I would say isn't far off what you would find in a compact crossover. Maybe not a CRV, which is like a class leader, but significantly better than an HRV or a subcompact crossover.
And really, cargo space is the only advantage, I think.
Yeah, it's like it's just it's the lack of height, really, right? So when you really want bigger items, you have to figure out a way to slide them in.
Well, not so much. I mean, you mean lack of height because it's a trunk instead of a hatch?
Yes.
Hatch opening?
Yeah. That's my major issue. And again, Accord doesn't offer all-wheel drives. Honda seems to really not dig all-wheel drive on its sedans or hatchbacks.
Most people do not need it.
Yeah, of course. But that hasn't stopped other automakers from...
All-wheel drive is pure marketing. I mean, maybe there's 2 or 3 days a year where you really would have needed it. And on those days, just stay home. Like, if the roads are that bad, if the roads are that bad, why subject yourself to that stress?
There's also a want. I think that all-wheel drive in the past has had a performance, not like a major performance benefit, but like an off-the-line or out of corners kind of push, like
Maybe for
like
specialized
propulsion.
systems. But I mean, you can't say that something like the Subaru Legacy was leveraging all-wheel drive for performance purposes. You know what I mean? Like
That's just because it was not. Yeah, it wasn't a really powerful car.
some models, perhaps, but like not across the board is where I'm going with that.
Yeah, but I mean, like to see the Prius and the Corolla and the Camry all offering all-wheel drive means that there's got to be a reason, right?
Yeah, you know what the reason is? They developed a hybrid drivetrain for the RAV4. And
that
then
can
they
fit
were
in
like,
all these cars cheaply.
Yeah, they're like,
and
hey,
people pay for it.
We already have this. Why don't we just use it? I mean, Honda doesn't have a similar investment, I guess. They're not willing to do that. Their cars are already expensive enough. I don't.
Yeah,
what would an all-wheel drive Civic hybrid cost?
Yeah,
like $45,000.
Yeah, your $50,000 Civic non-Type R.
How much am I paying for that per month on an 84-month loan? I don't want to get into that.
Yeah, I've been noticing that on the Canadian side is that they're offering these awful like financing rates. 84 months at 7.29%.
What's the last time you've done anything for 84 months? This podcast? Is it the only thing in your life?
Yeah, it's got to be.
I mean, that's a long stretch of time.
It is. I can't remember a time when we haven't been doing it.
Yeah, and if you now take that period of time and imagine yourself indebted to the man, like the whole period.
Indebted to an Accord that may not be worth that money anymore.
You're underwater,
right?
like after year 5. There's no question.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else you want to talk about this week?
No, I'm good. That worked.
You just had an awful infotainment system experience in your Civic. Yes. And everything else about it was pretty cool.
Bad news, infotainment, but good news, everything else except fuel mileage middling in the winter, which is what you can expect. Right. And also expensive, but maybe worth it? ?
Well, I mean, the cool thing about the Civic is it's gotten much bigger.
Is that what's cool
and
about
it? That's about it. I mean, it has gotten bigger. So at least when you're buying a Civic, I think I mentioned this when the new gen came out. It's like really close in size to the last generation Accord or something.
What's funny about sedans is like in the world of crossovers, they all keep getting bigger, right? And what happens is they just add another one. Like they make a smaller one that fits in at the bottom. So, like that's how we got HRV because CRV got to be too big. And they're like, well, there's space now for an HRV to slide in there. But with sedans, it just doesn't happen. No one's like, let's make a subcompact Civic. Like, no, we had a really cool Fit. Honda Fit was awesome. Yeah. They take the Fit off the market because it's so much better than the HRV. They knew they would not sell any HRVs. That's the reality of it.
And then like the new gen HRV is nothing like a Fit in any way or form.
No, it's like they were trying to sell us so hard on the idea that they had given a Fit all-wheel drive and jacked it up. But in reality, they had like taken a bunch of different platforms and melded them together and had never successfully achieved the same efficiency of space and form that the Fit had represented. And that's really sad because the Fit was like a uniquely cool vehicle in that way.
Did you know that in another market, there's a version of the Honda Fit that is a crossover? It's called the Crossstar, Honda Fit Crossstar.
Crossstar.
And this is what it looks like when you don't ditch the Fit. Anyways,
that's a timeline I wish that we lived in.
I know, isn't that one of these days we'll talk about the multiverse where crossovers did not take over and sedans all got better. Or wagons continued, or minivans got better. I mean, we're just talking about Europe at this point, I suppose.
Yeah, Europe, which is mired in problems in its own market. So who's to say whether that product line was actually better financially for the car companies? Doesn't seem to be working for like Fiat and everyone else, but who can say?
Oh, yeah. Anything else you want to talk about this week?
No, I'm good.
Talking about pricing, like apparently Toyota released the pricing of the 4Runner. It's out of whack too, so maybe we'll talk about that another time.
We'll talk about that another time, but let's just say you're going to be paying way more for the 4Runner unless you're buying the base model, which I don't think anyone is.
So, which I don't think anyone would be able to find.
I think that the TRD Pro is up to almost $70,000, and at that point, at what point do you step back from like the Toyota madness and say, I could be driving a Defender? You know?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Like this is This is Rubicon money, right?
That's wild.
And is the cult of the 4Runner strong enough to support that? It is.
I think so.
Lexus.
Yes,
it's definitely Lexus. You're probably right up against GX at that point, right?
That's tough. GX is really, really, from what I've been told, I haven't driven it yet, and I think you have. It's very good.
I haven't driven it. No, I've only driven the
okay.
4Runner. Not the 4Runner. Sorry, the Land Cruiser.
Which was a dud.
Total dud. Mostly because of pricing. If that was $10,000 cheaper...
What do you mean mostly because of price? A Subaru Crosstrek has more ground clearance than it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But a Subaru Crosstrek also costs like 50% of the price. So that's okay, you know?
No, that's not a Land Cruiser to me. That is not a Land Cruiser.
Get all like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm all about the marketing. A Land Cruiser should be able to do things better than other off-road vehicles.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with you there.
Okay, good.
So if you do want to argue with us, Sammy, how can people reach out and argue with us? Or tell us about dentist stuff?
I forgot about that. Go to our website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. While you're there, you can fill out a contact form, and that lands in our inbox. If you don't want to bother with that, just go to just email us the old-fashioned way. It's benjamin@benjaminhunting.com. Or you can reach out to us on Instagram. I'm at Sammy_ha, like you're laughing. And Ben is at Hunting Benjamin. And I believe we're on Blue Sky. I'm at Sammy-ha, like you're laughing. And Ben is also at Hunting Benjamin or whatever it is, Blue Sky.
And Sammy, what are you going to be talking about next week?
I'm trying to get my hands on a Camry so that I can do the back-to-back comparison of the Accord and Camry, but we'll see, man.
I'm going to be talking about the Toyota Corolla Hybrid all-wheel drive, as I hinted at throughout this show, and it's going to be a very different conversation than the one we just had about the Civic. That's also our last show of the year, I believe. So we might bring out some, good cars that we drove this year and talk about them and what we liked and what we didn't like, I guess, about 2024.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, that's until next time. Thank you for listening.
See ya.